Though WWE have consistently tried to prove otherwise in recent times, no wrestling company can truly survive and inspire people all around the world to routinely tune in without one vital component: stars. But stars don't just fall into a promoter's lap. In order to create the next big thing, no, not another Brock Lesnar, a wrestler must be built properly and eventually given an effective platform to get over with the fans. These strategies can sometimes be seen coming a mile away though, and this can unfortunately lead to a backlash if those paying their hard-earned cash feel like they're being forced to cheer for a company pick. However, star-making performances aren't always soul-crushingly predictable. Whether it was through an unexpected squash or outstanding debut, these 10 wrestlers all saw an unlikely chance to become the name on everyone's lips and took it successfully. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 recent star-making wrestling performances nobody saw coming. Number 10, Dominik Mysterio shines on his debut versus Seth Rollins. Towards the back end of 2019, it appeared Rey Mysterio's son Dominik was being positioned as a potential star of the future, but Dominik was then left out of the spotlight for a spell, before unexpectedly returning when his pop's eye was viciously attacked by Seth Rollins in May of this year. In the end, Dominik was finally given his chance to get his hands on Rollins in a street fight at SummerSlam, a match which would also be his WWE debut. Producing a performance which many full-time WWE talents would struggle to match, Mysterio more than held his own against the former Universal Champion. And if he needed any more evidence of just how well Dominik did on his first night as an active competitor, the youngster also received a great big hug from WWE Chairman Vince McMahon when he got backstage, and was told, "Very few people get that kind of reaction whenever they're in the ring, no matter how long they've been in the business, so you should be very, very proud of yourself." Not bad for 23 years old. Number 9, SHOTZI Blackheart proves she can hang with the best versus SHIRAI. For the most part, whenever fans of NXT bring up the topic of SHOTZI Blackheart, the conversation tends to center around the star's tank-assisted entrance and urge to howl every 5 minutes. However, underneath her miniature mode of transport and tendency to staple things to her chest lies a performer who has been quietly improving every single time she steps into the ring. This was never more clear than in her recent showdown against NXT Women's Champion and Division Standard-bearer SHIRAI on an episode of the Black and Gold show. Spending less time pretending to be a wolf and more time matching the champ shot for shot, Blackheart for the first time felt like a genuine threat to Shirai's title, even if this was just a non-title encounter. This match may not have catapulted her straight into the current title picture, but even in defeat, the green-haired weirdo, Wade Barrett's words, not mine, unexpectedly proved she now has the wrestling chops to hang with the very best and back up her truly distinct character. Number 8, Brodie Lee makes you sit up and pay attention versus Cody Rhodes. Though Mr. Brodie Lee was definitely being presented in a much more flattering way in the world of All Elite Wrestling than he had been in Vince McMahon's company, he still hadn't properly marked himself out as one of the top guys on Wednesday nights. All that changed, however, once he got his terrifying hands on TNT champion Cody Rhodes on a special recent Saturday night edition of Dynamite. Quickly extinguishing the plucky American Nightmare's fire, Lee proceeded to ragdoll the former WWE star around the arena, successfully squashing one of the biggest names in the promotion, and an AEW executive vice president wasn't enough though. Lee went further, bringing in the rest of his Dark Order to massacre the entire Nightmare family. Sure, he'd eventually lose the belt back to Rhodes down the road, but make no mistake, this was Mr. Brodie Lee's coming out party, and it could also be a sign of darker things to come. Number 7, Timothy Thatcher loses teeth but gains respect in the Fight Pit versus Matt Riddle. Thanks to the world abruptly going into lockdown and Pete Dunne being stranded in England, Timothy Thatcher was suddenly brought in to pair up with Matt Riddle, and the duo actually remarkably retained the NXT Tag Team Championships against Undisputed Era. So far so good then. Yet this honeymoon period did not last too long. Thatcher eventually walked out on his teammate during another defense, which resulted in them losing the titles to Imperium, and ultimately facing off against each other later in the night. Despite losing that singles match, Thatcher would continue to attack his former partner, so a Fight Pit battle between the two was announced for the following week's show. It was here where Thatcher undoubtedly announced himself as one of NXT's brightest stars, and lost a few teeth in victory. Beating the absolute crap out of the former MMA man, Thatcher's brutal catch wrestling style marked him out as a truly unique prospect, and Triple H has regularly shone the spotlight on him ever since. Number 6, Dakota Kai pushes the champion to the limit versus Io Shirai. Dakota Kai had been consistently putting on decent displays during her feud with old pal Tegan Nox, and the heel even scored herself a typical towering sidekick in Raquel Gonzalez. But some fans still doubted whether she could believably pose a threat to the impressive NXT Women's Champion Io Shirai coming into TakeOver 30. However, by putting on a career-best performance at the landmark event, Kai thoroughly ensured that Shirai well and truly met her match, surprisingly leaning more on her underrated prowess in the ring than the usual heelish bending of the rules. Her excellent display, regardless of the fact she didn't actually lift the NXT Women's Championship on the night, eventually earned her a ton of praise from none other than Triple H himself, with the executive producer of NXT saying, "Hats off to Dakota Kai, just earning it every step of the way, and win or lose man, she had a star-making night across the board." Though very few saw the New Zealander as a serious top name in NXT's women's division at the start of 2020, Kai has now forced herself into the conversation, and will likely only improve further in the coming months. Number 5, Orange Cassidy actually tries versus Pac. A year ago, back when AEW was in its infancy, if somebody told you arguably one of the most overperformers in the company would be a dude who wrestles with his hands in his pockets, you'd probably have laughed right in their face. But a year is a long time, and something rather insane happened midway through this particular 12-month spell. After spending weeks and months acting like he'd rather be anywhere else but locking up with AEW's finest, Orange Cassidy was finally booked in his first ever singles match for the company at Revolution against the bastard Pac. Only this time, his best friend pals revealed that he was actually gonna try. After producing a few flickers of offense throughout the match, Cassidy finally let rip, and the roof of the Wintrust Arena nearly blew off, proving once and for all that he possessed the ability to go toe-to-toe with one of the best on the planet. Freshly Squeezed went from lighthearted comic relief to bona fide superstar in one jaw-dropping encounter. Number 4, Keith Lee outshines the big dog for NXT versus Raw versus SmackDown. When NXT suddenly crashed the main roster Survivor Series party in 2019, you had a feeling something special was on the horizon. However, that being said, few people foresaw the black and gold brand actually coming out on top by the end of the historic pay-per-view. But when they did. Yet one particular performer, who had slowly been gathering a bit of momentum on Wednesday nights, unexpectedly walked out of the show as the most in-demand man in the company. We're talking, of course, about the unstoppable Keith Lee, a star who almost single-handedly toppled 2/3 of the Shield in the closing stretch of an anything but typical Survivor Series elimination match. Sure, he wasn't able to conquer the big dog and earn NXT yet another point on the board that night, but he definitely did enough to get people talking, and they would continue to do so right up until the moment he made his Monday Night Raw debut in August 2020. Number 3, Kyle O'Reilly breaks the Prince's jaw versus Finn Balor. Outlasting other future stars such as Cameron Grimes, Bronson Reed, Kushida, and Timothy Thatcher in a gauntlet eliminator, none other than Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly scored himself an NXT Championship date at TakeOver 31 with Finn Balor, even with just a solitary week's worth of build. This contest immediately felt special, and after a rather intense sit-down face-to-face, O'Reilly suddenly went from tag team specialist to a singles performer capable of toppling the newly crowned prince in the eyes of the NXT faithful. Delivering on this setup and then some, O'Reilly successfully beat the living piss out of a star he'd been chasing for years. But he wouldn't escape unscathed, carrying a debilitating liver injury throughout much of a match he would ultimately lose. It was this ability to fight through the pain, though, coupled with a demonstration of his top-of-the-card caliber in-ring skill set, which helped mark O'Reilly out as a serious potential superstar at the most recent TakeOver event. Number 2, Sonya Deville tears into her former best friend versus Mandy Rose. This unexpected star-making moment may not have gone down during a match or in front of any sort of live crowd, but Sonya Deville undoubtedly announced herself in a big way regardless a few months back. just a couple of weeks removed from a potentially friendship-ending revelation involving DEVILLE conspiring with Dolph Ziggler to keep Mandy Rose and Otis apart, the Fire and Desire duo met face-to-face in the middle of an empty performance center. A career-best stretch on the mic soon exploded from the former MMA fighter's mouth, impressively switching gears from remorseful best pal to cold, calculated villain in the blink of an eye. DEVILLE flexed promo muscles which many previously hadn't seen from her before. In this moment, DEVILLE successfully kickstarted what would become arguably the most engaging program in WWE throughout the crowdless era. Her journey may have come to an abrupt end at SummerSlam due to the star losing a loser leaves WWE match against her old partner, but expect DEVILLE to take whatever brand she shows up on next by storm once she finally makes her return. Number 1. Jey Uso refuses to bow to the Tribal Chief versus Roman Reigns. During the build-up to the Clash of Champions cousin versus cousin Universal Championship showdown, the newly badass Roman Reigns had regularly reminded his own blood Jey Uso that he simply wasn't on his level, and this upcoming match was merely a surprising payday for the tag team star. But it was clearly so much more to the twin who'd spent his life being asked, "Which one are you?" Producing the performance of his life in the biggest in-ring moment of his career, Jey attacked, bumped, and sold like the main event level babyface his cousin arrogantly claimed he could never be, all before being pummeled into oblivion by the increasingly unsettling Tribal Chief, and forcing his brother to stop the match. But Jey never quit, and in doing so he suddenly established himself as WWE's latest organic, plucky underdog star. And that's our list. Know of any other recent star-making wrestling performances nobody saw coming? Let us know all about them in the comments section below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and click on some more awesome articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.